You know, we live in this super connected world, right? We're working with people from all over the globe. But sometimes it feels like there are these invisible lines that divide us, leading to all sorts of confusion and frustration. Well, today, we're going to dive into Erin Meyer's fantastic book, The Culture Map, to finally see those hidden boundaries and figure out how to navigate them. So just imagine this for a second. You're Erin Meyer, you're in Paris, and you're leading this super high-stakes meeting. Everything, and I mean everything, hinges on your Chinese culture expert, a guy named Bo Chen. But for 3 solid hours, as you're presenting, he just sits there in complete and utter silence. And that little seed of doubt in your mind starts to grow into full-blown panic. You're thinking, he's not prepared. This whole deal is about to fall apart.
So what on earth went wrong there? You're prepared, he's obviously an expert, so what's the disconnect? This one question, right here, is the key to unlocking the whole puzzle of how we talk to each other across cultures.
That feeling, that absolute panic Meyer felt, it didn't come from a huge mistake. It came from a simple misunderstanding. And to get to the bottom of it, we have to unpack what was really going on in that room. Okay, so here's the breakdown. For Meyer, coming from an American cultural background, if you're engaged, you speak up, right? You jump in. Silence, well, silence feels like a problem. It feels like you're not prepared or not interested. But for Chen, his silence was actually a sign of deep respect. He was waiting for the proper moment for the host to invite him to speak. He didn't want to be rude and interrupt. See? It was a complete clash of unspoken, invisible rules. So why do these clashes happen so often, and why are they so darn hard to see coming? Well, to explain this, Meyer uses this brilliant metaphor that really gets to the heart of the problem.
The story goes a little something like this. 2 young fish are just swimming along, doing their thing, when an older, wiser fish swims by and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?"
And then 2 young fish are just totally stumped. They look at each other, and one of them asks, "What the hell is water?" They have no idea what he's talking about because it's the very thing they exist in. It's so fundamental, it's completely invisible to them.
And that right there perfectly illustrates the problem. Our own culture, it's the water we swim in. Its rules, its assumptions, its communication styles are so deep-seated in us that we don't even see them as culture. We just see it as, well, the normal way of doing things.
So if our own culture is like invisible water, how in the world are we supposed to navigate someone else's? Well, this is where Meyer gives us an incredibly powerful tool to make the invisible visible.
She calls it the culture map. And it's basically this amazing framework built on 8 different scales that, well, they measure how different cultures handle common situations at work. Now, this isn't about putting people in boxes or stereotyping. It's about understanding where a culture generally falls on a spectrum so you can start to decode behavior and adapt your own style. It's a game changer.
The whole map is built on these 8 scales. Here are just 4 of them to give you a little taste. They cover everything from how we communicate and give feedback to how we persuade people and even how we lead. Each one is a spectrum. So let's look at a couple of these in action to see how this really works. All right, this is where the theory gets really practical and, I've got to say, a little bit mind-blowing.
Let's start with that communicating scale. On one end, you have low-context cultures. Think the US, Australia, the Netherlands. Here, good communication is crystal clear. You say what you mean, and you mean what you say. But on the other end, in high-context cultures, like Japan, China, or France, good communication is way more nuanced. The real message is often found in what is not said. It's all about reading the air.
In France, for example, a message can be delivered through what's called a sous-entendu, which literally means under the herd. It's all about the unspoken subtext. The expectation is that the listener is sophisticated enough to read between the lines and catch the real meaning.
Okay, now the evaluating scale, which is all about feedback, this is where things get really fun. I love this table. It shows the massive potential for misunderstanding between the British, who are masters of polite, indirect feedback, and the Dutch, who are famously direct. A British person might say something like, "Very interesting," which is a polite way of saying, "I hate this idea." But their Dutch colleague just hears, "Wow, he's impressed." It's both hilarious and, let's be honest, a little terrifying.
And this quote from a Dutch manager just nails it. He says, "In the Netherlands, we give feedback very directly, but we are always polite." You see, what he sees as direct but perfectly polite might be seen as shockingly rude in London, let alone in Tokyo. The very definition of what's polite totally depends on the water you swim in.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? How can you actually apply this map to your own work and life without just trying to memorize a bunch of cultural stereotypes?
Here it is. This is the most important takeaway from the entire book. It's not about your absolute position on any of these scales. It's all about the gap, the relative position between your culture and the person you're talking to. So a British person might seem indirect to a Dutch person, right? But that same British person will seem incredibly, brutally direct to a colleague from Japan. Success is all about spotting that gap and learning how to bridge it.
By understanding these scales, we can start to see those invisible forces that shape how we interact. We can see our own biases, and more importantly, we can learn to really appreciate all the different ways that people think and lead and get things done all over the world. So the question to leave you with is, now that you've had a taste, what color is your water?